The crystal towers of Zelani Prime shook as another wave of plasma fire struck the planetary shields. Ambassador Kithara pressed her translucent hands against the viewing window of the emergency council chamber, watching the enemy ships circle, their world like hungry predators. The Vorthak Empire had come for them at last. "How long can the shields hold?" she asked, turning to Defense Coordinator Velmon. Her voice carried the musical quality of her species, but fear made it sharp and brittle. 6 days at most, Velmon replied. His crystal body flickered with stressed patterns of red and orange. The Vorthak fleet grows larger every hour. They are bringing in more ships from the outer systems. Kethara closed her eyes and felt the vibrations through the tower floor. Each impact sent tremors through the building, through the city, through her very soul. The Zelani Federation had enjoyed peace for 300 years. Their crystal cities were built for beauty and harmony, not war. Their ships were designed for exploration and trade, not battle. Against the military might of the Vorthak Empire, they were helpless children. "What news from our allies?" she asked. "The Corvan Republic sends their regrets but cannot spare ships from their own border conflicts," Velmon said. "The Altarian Trade League offers medical supplies but no military aid. The Nexus Confederation has closed their borders entirely." Kethara nodded grimly. It was as she had expected. The galaxy was full of species who preferred neutrality to risk. The Vorthak Empire had grown powerful precisely because civilized worlds chose not to fight. Another explosion rocked the tower. This time, the lights flickered. "We must send the message," Kethara said quietly. "To which worlds?" "We have already contacted everyone who might help." "Not everyone." Kethara moved to the communications console. "There is one world we have not tried. The humans." Velmon's crystal form shifted to purple, the color of confusion. "The humans. But Ambassador, they are barely more than primitives. They have only just developed faster than light travel. Their entire civilization exists on a single world." "They are new to the galaxy, yes," Kethara agreed. "But they are also unknown. Perhaps they will help where others will not." She began typing the message, her fingers dancing across the holographic interface. The words came slowly as she tried to choose them carefully. The translation matrix between their languages was still crude and imperfect. "People of Earth," she began. "We are the Zelani Federation. Our worlds are under attack by the Vorthak Empire. Many innocent lives are at risk. We request assistance. Any aid you can provide would be deeply appreciated. Medical supplies, food, shelter materials, or peaceful intervention would save countless lives. We do not ask you to fight our battles, only to help us preserve what we can. Please respond if you are able to help." She paused, then added, "We know you are a young species, but sometimes youth brings courage that age has forgotten." The message traveled through the Galactic communication network, bouncing from relay station to relay station until it reached the Sol system. Kethara had no idea what response to expect, if any. On Earth, the message arrived at the Global Communications Center in Geneva during the early morning hours. The night shift operator, a tired woman named Carol Davis, almost missed it among the routine traffic reports and trade negotiations. But something about the desperate tone made her forward it immediately to the Earth Defense Force headquarters. Captain Jake Morrison was reviewing supply reports in his office when the communication alert chimed. He was a compact man with steel-gray hair and the kind of steady eyes that came from years of military service. At 45, he had fought in the Resource Wars, the Arctic conflict, and the final phases of the unification campaign that had brought peace to Earth just 10 years earlier. He read the message 3 times, then called his aide. "Get me Lieutenant Rodriguez and Dr. Carter," he said. "Emergency briefing in Conference Room Alpha." 20 minutes later, Morrison sat across from Amy Rodriguez, his tactical officer, and Ben Carter, the xenobiologist who served as their alien contact specialist. Rodriguez was young for her rank, barely 30, but she had earned her position through sharp thinking and steady nerves. Carter was older, a thoughtful man who had made first contact protocols his life's work. "Thoughts?" Morrison asked after they had read the message. It's clearly a distress call, Carter said. The Zilani are described in our files as peaceful crystal-based life forms, non-aggressive, highly intelligent, focused on art and philosophy. If they're asking for help, the situation must be desperate. What about these Vorthak? Rodriguez asked. Carter pulled up files on his tablet. Aggressive expansionist empire, insectoid species highly militarized. They've conquered at least 40 systems in the past century. Their methods are brutal but effective. Morrison leaned back in his chair. So we have peaceful artists being attacked by military insects, and they're asking Earth for help. The request seems to be for humanitarian aid, Carter said. Medical supplies, food, that sort of thing. They specifically mention they don't expect us to fight. Rodriguez frowned. Sir, with respect, that doesn't make sense. If they're under active attack, medical supplies won't stop the enemy fleet. They need military intervention. Maybe they don't think we're capable of that, Morrison suggested. We are the new kids in the galaxy. Or maybe they don't understand how we operate, Rodriguez said. Sir, I've studied the reports from our first contact missions. Most galactic species seem to think we're some kind of peaceful traders. They have no idea what Earth has been through. Morrison stood and walked to the wall display showing Earth's defense grid. Orbital stations bristled with weapons that most aliens would consider excessive for a single-world civilization. The planet's surface was protected by systems designed to repel invasion fleets, not just pirates or raiders. Dr. Carter, what's your assessment of the translation quality on this message? Carter reviewed his notes. Rough but adequate. There might be some nuances lost, but the basic meaning is clear. They need help against aggressors. Then we help them, Morrison said simply. Sir? Rodriguez looked surprised. We're talking about intervening in an alien war, the political implications alone. Lieutenant, Earth didn't spend 30 years unifying this planet just to watch innocent people get slaughtered while we debate politics. Morrison cut her off. Get me General Hayes on Priority Channel. Tell her we need to discuss immediate deployment options. As Rodriguez moved to the communications panel, Carter looked troubled. Captain, I should point out that the Zilani message suggests they want peaceful intervention. They might not understand what they're asking for. Morrison was already reaching for his command jacket. Doctor, when someone calls for help against military aggressors, there's only one kind of intervention that works. Get me everything we have on Vorthak, ship designs and tactical doctrine. If we're going to help the Zilani, we're going to do it right. Neither Carter nor Rodriguez said what they were both thinking. Earth's definition of doing things right had never been particularly gentle. General Lisa Hayes stood before the massive holographic display in the Earth Defense Force Command Center, studying the tactical readout of the Zilani system. The room hummed with activity as dozens of officers worked at their stations, coordinating what would be humanity's first major military operation beyond their solar system. Distance to target? Hayes asked. 14 days at maximum burn, replied Commander Tony Mitchell, her chief of staff. The fleet can be ready to depart in 6 hours. Hayes nodded. At 52, she had commanded Earth's unified military through the final years of the planet's consolidation. The wars that had brought peace to humanity had also taught them hard lessons about the cost of hesitation when facing aggressive enemies. What's our force composition, Commander? Mitchell activated the fleet display. 5 massive ships appeared in the hologram, their angular designs reflecting humanity's approach to space warfare. The UES Vengeance, flagship under Captain Morrison. The UES Retribution, commanded by Captain Helen Brooks. The UES Devastator under Captain Sam Parker. The UES Predator with Captain Lisa Gordon, and the UES Annihilator commanded by Captain Ryan Torres. Crew status? All ships at full complement. Total of 15,000 personnel, including Marine battalions for ground operations if needed. Hayes studied the ship names and smiled grimly. When Earth had built its first interstellar fleet, the naming committee had chosen titles that reflected humanity's recent history of conflict. They were meant to discourage potential enemies, though she suspected most alien species didn't understand the implications. Any response from the Zilani since we confirmed receipt of their message? Yes, General. Mitchell called up a new communication. They sent this 12 hours ago. Hayes read the message, her expression growing more serious. The Zilani expressed gratitude for Earth's willingness to help, but emphasized again that they hoped for peaceful solutions. They mentioned their surprise that humanity was prepared to send military vessels and asked if smaller, less threatening, ships might be available. "They're worried about our fleet," Hayes observed. "It seems that way, General. Dr. Carter believes they may not understand the nature of the threat they're facing." Hayes turned to where Ben Carter stood near the intelligence displays. The xenobiologist had been working around the clock to analyze all available data on both the Zilani and the Vorthak. "Doctor, what's your assessment of Zilani military capabilities?" Carter activated his presentation. "Minimal, General. The Zilani evolved on a world with no large predators and very few natural disasters. Their entire civilization is built around cooperation and artistic expression. They have defense fleets, but they're designed more for deterrence than actual combat." "And the Vorthak?" "Complete opposite. They evolved on a world where everything was trying to kill everything else. Their society is built around hierarchy, aggression, and expansion. They've conquered 43 star systems using superior numbers and overwhelming force tactics." Hayes studied the comparative data. "So we have artists fighting soldiers." "Essentially, yes. The Zilani have better individual ship technology, but they don't have the tactical doctrine or the willingness to use it effectively. The Vorthak have older ships, but they know how to use them in coordinated attacks." "What about their assessment of us?" Carter looked uncomfortable. "That's where it gets interesting, General. According to galactic databases, Earth is classified as a Category 3 civilization. That means we're considered intelligent but not particularly advanced or dangerous. Category 3? The classification system goes from 1 to 15. Category 1 civilizations are considered galactic superpowers. Category 15 are primitive species that haven't developed spaceflight. Earth is ranked low because we're new and we only control 1 star system." Hayes felt a cold smile cross her face. "They think we're weak." "It's worse than that, General. I've been analyzing the data we've gathered from our first contact missions. Most alien species think Earth is some kind of paradise world. They see our blue oceans and green continents and assume we're soft. What do they think of our military? They don't think we have one. The ships we've been using for exploration and first contact are heavily disguised. Our weapons are hidden, our armor plating looks like civilian hull material, and our military personnel dress as scientists and diplomats." General Hayes had ordered that deception herself after Earth's first contact with alien traitors. The galaxy seemed full of aggressive species, and she had decided that appearing weak was safer than appearing strong until they understood the political situation better. "So the Zilani think they're asking for help from a peaceful trading civilization?" "Exactly. They probably expect us to send a hospital ship and some food supplies." Lieutenant Amy Rodriguez entered the command center and saluted. "General, the fleet is ready for departure. Captain Morrison is requesting final orders." Hayes looked at the tactical display one more time. The Vorthak fleet surrounding Zilani Prime was impressive by galactic standards, but it wouldn't have been considered a serious threat during Earth's resource wars. Still, the aliens didn't know that. "Tell Captain Morrison to proceed as planned. Full military deployment, but maintain communications silence until we reach the system. I want to see what we're dealing with before we announce our presence." "Yes, General. Any special rules of engagement?" Hayes considered the question. The Zilani had asked for peaceful intervention, but the Vorthak were clearly not interested in negotiation. Earth's military doctrine was simple. When facing an aggressive enemy, you hit them hard enough that they couldn't hit back. Standard protocols. Captain Morrison has tactical command. If the Vorthak fire on our ships or continue attacking civilian targets, he is authorized to use all necessary force to eliminate the threat. Rodriguez nodded and left to relay the orders. Carter remained behind, looking troubled. "General, I think we need to consider the possibility that our intervention might be seen as an act of war by the Vorthak. Doctor, they're already at war. The only question is whether we're going to let them finish destroying the Zilani while we debate the politics. But the Zilani may not want us to." "The Zilani asked for help. Hayes cut him off. When someone asks Earth for help against military aggressors, they get the kind of help that works. Carter looked like he wanted to argue further, but Hayes was already moving toward the exit. She had a fleet to launch and a rescue mission to coordinate. The finer points of galactic diplomacy would have to wait. As she left the command center, Hayes felt the familiar weight of command settle on her shoulders. Earth had spent decades learning how to fight and win against overwhelming odds. Now they would find out if those lessons applied to alien enemies. 6 hours later, the Earth Defense Force fleet departed Sol system at maximum burn, carrying 15,000 of humanity's finest soldiers toward their first interstellar war. The crews were eager, the ships were ready, and the weapons were loaded. Behind them, Earth's communication networks buzzed with activity as the government prepared for the possibility that their peaceful first contact with galactic civilization was about to become much more complicated. None of them knew that the Vorthak Empire had been tracking their communications and was already preparing for the arrival of what their intelligence services described as a minor threat from a primitive world. The galaxy was about to learn that sometimes the most dangerous mistakes come from underestimating the quiet ones. Dr. Ben Carter stood in the xenobiology lab aboard the UES Vengeance, staring at data that made his blood run cold. The ship had been traveling for 8 days, and with each day, his understanding of what they were walking into became more terrifying. "Captain, Morrison to the lab," he called over the intercom. "Priority 1. Jake Morrison arrived within minutes, followed by Lieutenant Rodriguez and Commander Mitchell. The ship's senior staff had learned to take Carter's concerns seriously during their journey. "What have you found, Doctor?" Morrison asked. Carter activated the main display, showing a 3-dimensional map of known space. "I've been analyzing all the data we've collected about galactic civilization. The picture is very different from what we initially thought." The display highlighted Earth in blue, surrounded by dozens of alien worlds in various colors. Each color represents a different classification level. Red worlds are considered the most dangerous, yellow worlds are moderately dangerous, and green worlds are considered safe. Morrison studied the map. "I see a lot of green and yellow, not much red." "That's the problem, Captain. Look at Earth." The display zoomed in on Sol system. Earth appeared as a deep red dot, darker than any other world on the map. "We're classified as a Class 12 death world," Carter said quietly. "That's the second highest danger rating in the galactic database." Rodriguez leaned forward. "What exactly does that mean?" "It means that according to galactic standards, Earth is barely habitable. Our gravity is 3 times galactic average. Our atmospheric pressure would crush most alien species. Our weather patterns are considered apocalyptic by civilized world standards." Carter brought up comparative data. The average galactic world has gravity of 0.3 Earth standard, atmospheric pressure of 0.4 Earth standard, and temperature variations of no more than 20 degrees across the entire planet. "That explains why the trading post we visited had such heavy life support equipment," Mitchell observed. "It gets worse," Carter continued. "I've been studying the biological data on various species. The Zelani, for example, evolved on a world with no predators larger than what we would consider insects. Their bones are hollow like bird bones. Their muscle density is roughly 1/10 of human standard." Morrison was beginning to understand. "They're fragile, extremely fragile. A Zelani could be killed by what we would consider a gentle push. Their entire species has never experienced violence on the scale that humans consider normal." Carter switched to data on the Vorthak Empire. The Vorthak are considered the most militarily aggressive species in known space. They've conquered dozens of systems and are feared throughout the galaxy. "And," Rodriguez prompted, "their homeworld has gravity of 0.8 Earth standard. Their atmospheric pressure is 0.6 Earth standard. Their largest wars involved maybe 1 million casualties total, spread over decades." The bridge fell silent as the implications sank in. "Doctor, are you telling me that the most feared military empire in the galaxy comes from a world that's easier to live on than Earth?" Morrison asked. "Much easier. And Captain, there's something else. I've been analyzing the translation matrix we've been using to communicate with the Zelani. Carter pulled up the original message. When they asked for assistance and peaceful intervention, the translation software interpreted those words based on human context. But in Galactic Standard, those terms have very specific meanings, such as assistance typically means medical aid, food supplies, or refugee transport. Peaceful intervention means diplomatic mediation or economic sanctions. They never asked for military intervention. Rodriguez swore under her breath. So they think we're bringing them bandages and soup. Essentially, yes, and there's more. I've been monitoring Vorthak communications that our intelligence section has intercepted. They're calling us the Deathworld fleet and expressing serious concern about our arrival. Morrison raised an eyebrow. They're worried about us? Very worried. According to their intelligence reports, any species that evolves on a Class 12 Deathworld would be, quote, apex predators beyond galactic comprehension. They're treating our arrival as a potential extinction-level threat. Carter switched to intercepts of Vorthak military communications. They've been pulling ships from other systems to reinforce their fleet around Zilani Prime. They've also been studying our ship designs and weapons signatures from our previous first contact missions. What have they concluded? That we've been hiding our true capabilities. They think our exploration ships are actually disguised warships. They're not wrong. Commander Mitchell stepped forward. Doctor, what's the current size of the Vorthak fleet? Approximately 400 ships with more arriving daily. It's the largest military force they've ever assembled. Morrison felt a grim smile cross his face. 400 ships against 5. Captain, I don't think you understand. Carter said urgently. The Vorthak aren't just afraid of our military. They're afraid of us. According to their psychological profiles, humans are classified as a Type 7 aggressive species with extreme territorial responses and unlimited escalation potential. Type 7. Most galactic species are Type 1 or 2. Type 3 is considered dangerously aggressive. Type 7 has never been encountered before. They created the classification specifically for us. Rodriguez looked at the data streaming across the screens. So let me get this straight. The Zilani think we're coming to provide humanitarian aid. The Vorthak think we're coming to exterminate them. And neither side understands what we're actually capable of. That's correct. And there's one more thing. Carter's voice was grim. I've been analyzing Earth's military history and comparing it to galactic conflicts. Captain, the resource wars on Earth involved more casualties in a single year than the entire recorded military history of galactic civilization. Morrison was quiet for a long moment. Doctor, in your professional opinion, what happens when we arrive at Zilani Prime? Carter looked at the data one more time. Captain, I think we're about to accidentally start the first interstellar war in galactic history. Lieutenant Rodriguez checked her tactical displays. Sir, we'll reach the Zilani system in 6 days. Morrison nodded slowly. Commander Mitchell, begin preparing the fleet for combat operations. All ships to battle readiness. Sir, are we expecting resistance? Morrison looked at the intercepts showing the massive Vorthak fleet gathering around Zilani Prime. Commander, we're flying 5 ships into a system defended by 400 enemy vessels. The Vorthak think we're an invasion force. The Zilani think we're a relief convoy, and neither side has any idea what humans are actually like. He turned to Carter. Doctor, send a message to the Zilani. Tell them we're approaching and that we intend to resolve their situation. Sir, should I clarify the nature of our mission? Morrison considered the question. The Zilani had asked for help against an aggressive military force. Earth was bringing help. The fact that galactic civilization had no concept of how humans provided help was not his problem. No, Doctor. Keep it simple. We're coming to help, and we'll handle the situation when we arrive. As the meeting broke up, Carter remained in the lab, staring at the data that showed just how unprepared the galaxy was for humanity's arrival. The Zilani were expecting medical supplies. The Vorthak were expecting a fight they might actually win. Both sides were about to learn that when humans decide to help, they don't do anything halfway. The human fleet dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the Zilani system, and Captain Jake Morrison immediately understood why the Vorthak Empire had assembled their largest battle force in history. The enemy fleet was massive beyond anything Earth's intelligence had predicted. Tactical report, Morrison ordered from the bridge of the UES Vengeance. Lieutenant Amy Rodriguez worked frantically at her station. Sir, I'm reading over 600 Vorthak vessels. They've formed a complete blockade around Zalani Prime. The planet's shields are failing. Ship classifications? Mostly cruisers and destroyers, but I'm counting at least 50 capital ships. Sir, they've brought everything they have. Morrison studied the tactical display. The Vorthak fleet formed, concentric rings around the Zalani homeworld, with smaller ships on patrol routes and the heavy vessels positioned for bombardment. It was an impressive sight, the kind of force that could conquer entire star systems. Communications from the Zalani? Morrison asked. Coming in now, sir. Rodriguez put the message on the main screen. Ambassador Cathara's crystalline face appeared, her features showing relief and concern in equal measure. Captain Morrison, we are grateful beyond words for your arrival. However, we must warn you that the Vorthak fleet is much larger than we anticipated. Perhaps it would be wise to withdraw and return with more ships. Morrison cut the transmission and opened a channel to the fleet. All ships, this is Vengeance Actual. Form standard battle formation, prepare for engagement. The 5 human vessels moved into position, their angular hulls dark against the starfield. Compared to the massive Vorthak armada, they looked insignificant. On the UES Retribution, Captain Helen Brooks reviewed the enemy formations with her tactical officer. 600 ships against 5. I've seen better odds. Ma'am, the Vorthak vessels are smaller than ours, her officer replied. Our intelligence suggests their largest ships are roughly frigate class by our standards. Brooks nodded. During Earth's wars, humanity had learned to build ships that could survive in hostile environments. The vessels that looked like simple exploration craft to alien eyes were actually heavily armored and armed to a degree that would shock galactic civilization. On Zalani Prime, Defense Coordinator Velmon watched the human fleet's arrival with growing alarm. 5 ships, he said to Ambassador Cathara. They brought 5 ships against the entire Vorthak armada. Perhaps they have a plan we do not understand, Cathara replied, though her voice carried doubt. The Vorthak fleet had also noticed the human arrival. Admiral Grextor, commander of the invasion force, studied the tactical displays from his flagship. The human vessels were moving with precision that suggested advanced tactical doctrine, but their numbers were laughably small. Send a warning message to the human fleet, Grextor ordered. Tell them to withdraw or be destroyed. The message reached the UES Vengeance moments later. Morrison read it once, then deleted it. Sir, Rodriguez said quietly, they're giving us a chance to leave. Lieutenant, we came here to help the Zalani. We're not leaving until the job is done. Morrison opened a channel to Dr. Carter in the xenobiology lab. Doctor, I need you to send a message to both the Zalani and the Vorthak. Standard diplomatic protocols. What should the message say, Captain? Morrison looked at the massive enemy fleet surrounding the dying world. Tell them that Earth is here to provide assistance to the Zalani people and to restore peace to this system. Any forces that do not withdraw immediately will be considered hostile. Carter's voice carried concern. Captain, that's essentially a declaration of war against the entire Vorthak fleet. Doctor, they're already at war. We're just picking a side. The message went out on all frequencies. On Zalani Prime, the leadership received it with confusion. Peace restoration typically meant negotiations and compromise, not military threats. The Vorthak response was immediate and predictable. Admiral Grextor's reply was brief and brutal. Surrender or die. Morrison smiled grimly. It was the same response Earth's enemies had given during the resource wars, right before they learned why humanity had unified their planet through conquest rather than diplomacy. All ships, this is Morrison. The Vorthak have declined our offer. You are authorized to engage. Remember, we're here to help the Zalani, which means removing the threat completely. The human fleet began moving toward the Vorthak formation. What happened next would be talked about in galactic military academies for centuries. though most of the documentation would be classified to prevent panic. The Vorthak opened fire first, which eliminated any legal questions about who started the fight. Plasma bolts and energy beams lanced out from hundreds of ships, concentrating on the lead human vessel. The UES Vengeance absorbed the incoming fire without apparent damage. Her shields flashed briefly, then stabilized. Morrison watched the weapons, impacts with the same expression he might have worn during a mild thunderstorm. "Return fire," he ordered. The human ships opened up with weapons that most galactic species had never seen before. Earth's military had developed their technology during decades of warfare against enemies who fought with nuclear weapons and orbital bombardments. The result was firepower that treated planetary defense grids as minor obstacles. The first Vorthak ship to die was a heavy cruiser that had been considered invincible by galactic standards. It took a direct hit from the UES Devastator and simply ceased to exist, vaporized so completely that the debris field was barely detectable. Admiral Grextor watched in horror as more of his ships began dying. The human weapons cut through Vorthak armor like it was paper. Their targeting systems were impossibly accurate, hitting critical systems with every shot. "All ships, concentrate fire on the lead human vessel," Grextor ordered. "Maximum power." The entire Vorthak fleet focused their weapons on the UES Vengeance. The space around Morrison's ship lit up like a small star as hundreds of energy beams struck home. When the light faded, the Vengeance was still there, her shields holding steady. "Interesting," Morrison observed. "Rodriguez, return fire. Target their command ship." The UES Vengeance fired a single shot. Admiral Grextor's flagship, a massive dreadnought that had led the conquest of a dozen worlds, exploded in a ball of fire that could be seen from the planet's surface. On Zalani Prime, Ambassador Cathara watched the battle through the planetary observation system. What she saw made no sense according to everything she knew about warfare. 5 ships were systematically destroying a fleet of 600, and they were doing it with casual efficiency. "How is this possible?" she whispered. Defense Coordinator Velmon was studying the energy readings from the human weapons. "Their firepower levels are beyond anything in our databases. Ambassador, I think we may have made a terrible mistake." "What do you mean?" "We asked for help from what we thought were peaceful traders, but those are not trading ships. Those are warships designed by a species that knows how to fight wars we cannot even imagine." The battle continued for exactly 17 minutes. When it ended, the Vorthak fleet had been reduced to scattered debris and a handful of ships fleeing toward the outer system. The human fleet remained in perfect formation, barely damaged despite facing overwhelming numerical odds. Morrison opened a channel to Zalani Prime. "Ambassador Cathara, this is Captain Morrison. The immediate threat to your world has been neutralized. We're beginning cleanup operations to ensure your system's security." Cathara stared at the tactical display showing the complete destruction of the Vorthak Armada. "Captain Morrison, we are grateful for your assistance, but what you have done here, this level of violence. Ma'am, you asked for help. We helped. The Vorthak are no longer a threat to your people." After Morrison cut the transmission, Cathara turned to her staff. "Send a priority message to the Galactic Council. Tell them that humanity is not what we thought. Tell them that the Deathworlders have arrived, and they fight wars like nothing we have ever seen." The message would take weeks to reach the Galactic capital, but when it did, it would change everything. 3 days after the battle, Captain Jake Morrison stood in the communications center of the UES Vengeance, reading reports that painted a disturbing picture. The destruction of the Vorthak fleet had been just the beginning. "How many Vorthak worlds have we identified?" Morrison asked Commander Tony Mitchell. 17 confirmed colonies plus their homeworld," Mitchell replied. "Our intelligence teams have been analyzing the data we recovered from their command ships." Morrison studied the star charts. "And the status of their remaining fleets?" "Scattered. Across 8 systems. They appear to be regrouping, but slowly. The destruction of their main battle force has left them confused and demoralized." Lieutenant Amy Rodriguez entered the communications center carrying a tablet full of intercepted messages. "Sir, we're picking up communications from across Vorthak space. They're calling what happened here the Zelani massacre and demanding revenge. Morrison looked up from the charts. Demanding revenge for what? They attacked the Zelani, we stopped them. Sir, according to their propaganda, we committed an act of unprovoked aggression against a peaceful exploration force. Dr. Ben Carter joined the group, looking exhausted from days of analyzing alien communications. Captain, the Vorthak are rewriting history as fast as they can transmit it. Their public broadcasts claim they were conducting humanitarian operations when we attacked without warning. Morrison felt his jaw clench. Doctor, we have recordings of them bombarding civilian targets. I know that, sir. But the Vorthak population doesn't. Their government controls all information, and they're being told that humans are genocidal monsters who destroyed a peaceful fleet. Commander Mitchell activated the tactical display. Sir, we're also receiving intelligence that the Vorthak are mobilizing additional forces. They're pulling ships from border patrols and garrison duties. It looks like they're preparing for a major military response. Morrison walked to the viewing port and stared out at the Zelani homeworld. The planet's cities were intact, their people safe. But somehow he felt like the situation was spiraling beyond his control. What's the estimate on their total military strength? Unknown, sir. Our initial intelligence was clearly incomplete. They may have thousands of ships across all their territories. Rodriguez consulted her tablet. Sir, we're also receiving communications from other galactic powers. Word of the battle is spreading fast. What kind of communications? Mixed reactions. Some species are expressing gratitude that someone finally stood up to Vorthak aggression. Others are demanding explanations for what they're calling excessive use of force. Carter pulled up translated messages on his workstation. Captain, the Andorian Republic has sent a formal inquiry asking about our military capabilities. The Corvin Confederacy wants to know if Earth is planning additional interventions. The Nexus Trade Alliance is requesting immediate diplomatic talks. Morrison read through several of the messages. Most seemed friendly, but there was an underlying tone of fear that troubled him. They're scared of us. Yes, sir. According to Galactic historical records, no single engagement has ever resulted in the complete destruction of a major military force in such a short time. What we accomplished in 17 minutes would normally take months of warfare. Rodriguez activated another display. Sir, there's something else. We're receiving reports of Vorthak raids on civilian targets in 3 systems. They appear to be retaliating for their losses here. Morrison's expression hardened. Retaliating against whom? Anyone they can reach, sir. They've attacked 2 mining colonies and a research station. Hundreds of casualties. Carter looked up from his translations. Captain, the Vorthak are claiming these attacks are justified responses to human aggression. They're saying that since Earth destroyed their fleet, they have the right to strike back at any human allies. We don't have any allies in those systems. No, sir. But the Vorthak are defining human allies as anyone who doesn't actively oppose human presence in the galaxy. Morrison felt the familiar weight of command settling on his shoulders. During Earth's wars, he had learned that some enemies only understood one language. The Vorthak seemed determined to prove they were that kind of enemy. Commander Mitchell, what's our current fleet status? All ships operational, sir. We've taken on supplies from the Zelani and completed minor repairs. The fleet is ready for extended operations. Morrison made his decision. Send a message to Earth Command. Request immediate deployment of the 2nd Fleet to this sector. Tell them we have a situation that requires comprehensive resolution. Sir, are you declaring a formal war? Commander, the Vorthak declared war when they started killing civilians. We're just going to finish it. Rodriguez looked concerned. Captain, the Zelani have been requesting meetings with you. Ambassador Cathara seems very anxious about our next moves. Morrison nodded. Schedule a meeting for this afternoon, and send a message to all Vorthak forces in this sector. Standard surrender. Terms. What if they refuse? Morrison looked at the tactical display showing Vorthak fleet movements across multiple systems. Then we hunt them down, 1 ship at a time, until they change their minds. Carter cleared his throat. Captain, I should point out that a campaign of that scope would essentially involve dismantling the entire Vorthak Empire. Doctor, the Vorthak Empire has spent centuries conquering peaceful worlds and enslaving civilian populations. If they want to make this a fight to the finish, we can accommodate them. Mitchell consulted his tactical computers. Sir, with the Second Fleet, we'd have enough firepower to neutralize their major installations. But we're talking about 18 star systems and possibly thousands of ships. How long for complete pacification? Conservative estimate: 6 months. That assumes they fight to the end. Morrison looked out at the peaceful blue-green world of Zelani Prime. The crystal cities reflected sunlight like jewels, and he could see the orbital stations that represented centuries of artistic and scientific achievement. The Vorthak had been willing to destroy all of it for the sake of expanding their empire. Make it happen, Commander, and send a message to the galactic community. Earth is committed to maintaining peace in this sector. Any species that threatens civilian populations will face the same response the Vorthak received. After his staff left to carry out orders, Morrison remained at the viewing port. He had come to Zelani space to help a peaceful civilization defend itself. Now he was planning a military campaign that would reshape the balance of power in this entire region of the galaxy. The Zelani had asked for help, and Earth had responded. But humanity's definition of help was proving to be far more thorough than anyone had expected. When humans decided to solve a problem, they solved it completely. 3 hours later, Ambassador Cathara sat across from Morrison in the UES Vengeance's diplomatic suite. Her crystalline features reflected her inner turmoil as she struggled to find words for an unprecedented situation. Captain Morrison, we are grateful beyond measure for what you have done. But we must ask, what are your intentions regarding the Vorthak Empire? Morrison met her gaze steadily. Ma'am, we intend to ensure they never threaten innocent people again. And how do you plan to accomplish that? By removing their ability to wage aggressive war. Cathara's form flickered with patterns that indicated deep concern. Captain, what you are describing sounds like the conquest of their entire civilization. Morrison considered her words carefully. Ambassador, Earth doesn't conquer civilizations. We liberate them. When we're finished, the Vorthak worlds will be free to choose their own governments and live in peace with their neighbors. But the cost in lives will be far less than the cost of leaving the Vorthak Empire intact. How many more worlds would they have conquered? How many more innocent people would have died? Cathara realized she was looking at something her peaceful civilization had no framework to understand. Morrison spoke of dismantling an interstellar empire with the same calm tone he might use to discuss the weather. Captain, are all human military operations conducted on this scale? Morrison smiled slightly. Ma'am, this is actually a fairly small operation by our standards. We're only dealing with one hostile empire in a limited geographic area. As Cathara left the meeting, she understood that the galaxy had fundamentally changed. The humans had come to help, and they were going to keep helping until there was nothing left to threaten the peace. 6 months later, Admiral Rick Stone stood on the observation deck of the UES Devastator, watching the final Vorthak stronghold surrender. The fortress world of Grextar Prime, once the military heart of an empire that had terrorized the galaxy, for centuries now flew white flags from every orbital station. That's the last of them, Admiral, reported Captain Helen Brooks, who had been promoted to Stone's chief of staff. The Vorthak High Command has agreed to unconditional surrender. Stone nodded, reviewing the final casualty reports on his tablet. The numbers were staggering, but not in the way most galactic observers expected. Total Vorthak military losses: approximately 8,000 ships destroyed, 40,000 personnel killed in action. Their civilian population is intact. Our losses: 17 ships damaged, none destroyed. 43 personnel killed, mostly in boarding actions. 212 wounded. Stone set down the tablet and looked out at the surrendering fortress. By galactic standards, the human campaign had been impossibly efficient. By Earth standards, it had been a minor police action with remarkably light casualties. Status of the liberated worlds? Brooks consulted her reports. All former Vorthak colonies have established provisional governments. The Zelani Federation is providing humanitarian aid and technical assistance. Most worlds are requesting continued human protection. And the Vorthak homeworld? Peaceful transition. The old military government collapsed when their fleet was destroyed. The civilian population has elected a democratic council that's already applied for membership in the Galactic Federation. Dr. Ben Carter joined them on the observation deck, carrying a stack of diplomatic communications that had arrived with the morning's data burst. Admiral, we're receiving responses from across the galaxy regarding the conclusion of operations. Stone accepted the messages and began reading. The reactions were as varied as he had expected, but the underlying theme was universal. Fear mixed with gratitude. The Altarian Trade League is offering exclusive commercial agreements, Carter summarized. The Corvan Republic wants to discuss a mutual defense treaty. The Nexus Confederation is requesting human advisors for their military academy. Any negative responses? Some concerns about human military capabilities, but nothing hostile. The consensus seems to be that having humans on their side is preferable to facing them as enemies. Stone read through a formal statement from the Galactic Council. It was a masterpiece of diplomatic language that essentially welcomed Earth as a major power while carefully avoiding any mention of how that status had been achieved. Doctor, what's the situation with galactic trade and communication? Dramatically improved, sir. With the Vorthak threat eliminated, shipping routes that have been closed for decades are reopening. Several species that had been hiding in defensive positions are emerging to establish diplomatic contact. Captain Morrison's voice came over the ship's communication system. Admiral Stone to the bridge. Priority communication from Earth Command. Stone made his way to the bridge where Morrison was waiting with a message from General Hayes. The communication was brief and to the point. Excellent work. Establish permanent bases to maintain regional stability. Second Fleet will remain on station indefinitely. So we're staying, Morrison observed. Looks that way, Captain. The Zelani system will serve as our regional headquarters. We'll establish monitoring stations in the former Vorthak territories and rapid response bases at strategic locations. Lieutenant Rodriguez, now promoted to commander, looked up from her tactical displays. Sir, we're receiving a request from the Zelani government. They want to hold a ceremony to formally thank Earth for our assistance. Stone considered the request. Schedule it for next week. Full diplomatic protocol. The ceremony took place on Zelani Prime in the Grand Assembly Hall, a crystalline structure that could hold representatives from dozens of worlds. Ambassador Cathara stood before the gathered delegates, her translucent form reflecting the rainbow lights of her species' most formal occasions. 6 months ago, our world faced extinction, she began, her musical voice carrying clearly through the hall's acoustic systems. We sent a message asking for help, expecting perhaps medical supplies or food aid. Instead, Earth sent us salvation. She gestured toward Admiral Stone and the human delegation. The humans came not with bandages and medicine, but with the power to remove the threat entirely. They fought a war we could not fight, won a victory we could not achieve, and gave us a peace we had thought impossible. The assembly hall fell silent as Cathara continued. But we must also acknowledge what we have learned about our new allies. Earth fights wars as we might tend gardens, with thoroughness, efficiency, and an absolute commitment to achieving the desired result. She turned to address Stone directly. Admiral, when we asked for help, we thought we understood what that meant. We have learned that human help comes with a guarantee of success that our civilization had never imagined possible. Stone stood. To respond, his words translated instantly for the assembled representatives. Ambassador Cathara, honored delegates, Earth is pleased to have been of service. We want you to know that our offer stands open to any peaceful civilization facing threats they cannot handle alone. The statement sent ripples of conversation through the assembly. Several delegates exchanged meaningful glances, clearly thinking about their own regional problems. However, Stone continued, we want to be clear about what Earth's assistance entails. When we commit to helping, we don't stop until the problem is solved completely. We don't negotiate partial solutions or accept temporary peace agreements with aggressive forces. Ambassador Cathara translated the statement into diplomatic terms that the assembly could understand. The admiral is explaining that human military doctrine does not recognize the concept of limited warfare. When they intervene, they achieve total victory. After the ceremony, Stone met privately with Cathara in her chambers overlooking the Crystal City. The Zelani leader seemed thoughtful as she served a traditional tea that humans could actually digest, one of the few alien foods that didn't require special preparation. Admiral, may I ask you a personal question? Of course, Ambassador. When your people first received our message, did you understand that we were only asking for humanitarian aid? Stone considered the question carefully. I think we understood that you believed you were asking for humanitarian aid. But from our perspective, when innocent people are being killed by military aggressors, the most humanitarian response is to eliminate the aggressors. Cathara nodded slowly. I see. And you truly see no difference between providing medical supplies and destroying an entire empire? The difference is efficiency, Ambassador. Medical supplies might save thousands of lives over several years. Removing the threat saves millions of lives permanently. As Stone prepared to leave, Cathara offered one final observation. Admiral, I believe our species has learned something important about asking Earth for help. What's that? We should be very careful what we wish for. Humans have a tendency to give us exactly what we need, whether we realize we need it or not. Stone smiled as he left the embassy. Throughout the former Vorthak territories, human bases were being established to ensure continued peace. The galaxy was learning to live with its new protectors, and Earth was learning its place as the species others called when problems needed to be solved permanently. 3 days later, the first new request for assistance arrived at the Human Command Center. The Draconian Consortium was being threatened by pirate fleets and requested Earth's help in securing their trade routes. Admiral Stone read the message and smiled. Commander Rodriguez, prepare the Third Fleet for deployment. It looks like we have another humanitarian mission. The galaxy was about to learn that when humans offered help, it came with a lifetime guarantee.